Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I'm joined by Luke Winter. Luke has a background in operations in the real estate investment space and has a TV marketing agency right now. I'm going to talk to him all about business operations and marketing, what his opinions are. This is one of my favorite conversations I've had with someone on the podcast recently, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Luke, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Yeah, likewise. I'm excited to have you here. You're one of the people that I really respect in this space, and I think will drive a lot of value for this conversation. I want to start with an introduction to you for people who don't know who you are, where you come from, what's your background, what have you done, what are you doing now, and basically how'd you get here?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. First of all, I appreciate you having me on here, and I feel very similarly that you're one of the very trusted authorities in the real estate investing space and somebody I look up to and respect. So thanks for having me on. It's an honor. So yeah, for people who aren't familiar with me, I run a company, an ad agency that does very specialized advertising for real estate investors. We really even focus narrowly even more on TV advertising. So we help wholesalers and flippers run their TV advertising campaigns. That's kind of in a nutshell what we focus on now. How did I get here? Man, we can go way back into my real estate investing, like deep origins. If you want to start like 2009 era, my most recent splash in real estate really came from working as COO in a local home buying and flipping business in the Minneapolis area. We were doing a couple hundred deals a year, pretty even split between flips and wholesales, pretty diverse organization, lots of employees, lots of capital moving around. We've seen a lot of different marketing channels come and go, different flippers, wholesalers come and go. So we got a good perspective on the marketplace. I've done some personal real estate investing on my own, some commercial deals, some flips and wholesales before I even really knew what wholesaling was called. And so, yeah, that's kind of the scoop.
Cool. Yeah, good for you. Yeah, and this is interesting because you started this marketing company that specializes in TV not super long ago, right?
That's correct.
How long?
We've been going at it for about 9 months now.
Okay. How many clients do you guys have?
That's a great question. I don't disclose the specifics of it. We're at about half dozen-ish right now. And, the election plays a lot of games with TV advertising specifically.
I'm sure.
So we've got a handful of folks that are kind of stacked up that we're rolling out here pretty quick.
Cool. Yeah, and the reason I ask you some specifics is just to give people some context, because anybody who knows the industry really well probably knows that, like, for somebody wanting to do TV marketing in this industry, there's kind of historically been like 3 options. 2 of them agencies, one of them like call up your local TV station and try to figure it out, and then here you are, you're the new kid on the block, right? A little bit. Although, if I'm not mistaken, you've been managing TV in this industry for years, just previously like in-house for your own company.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so there are a couple mainstays in the industry. Honestly, I view it as I'm in competition with myself. I always challenge myself to bring the most value possible. But what everybody else does, it's out of my control. So I'm in competition with myself daily, improving our product and offering and customer service every day. That's my lens on it, and that's the way I can add the most value to our clients. And there's some stuff that I'm really excited about. If we want to get into the details of it down the road, we've got some really cool stuff in development. But yeah, I think from a strategic perspective, I spent a lot of time developing what our model would look like, how we can contribute at the highest level to the real estate investor community, and what are those clients' needs specifically from a customer support perspective, from a feedback perspective, from a strategic perspective. And I spent a lot of time with advertising agency, media buying agencies, veterans of the industry, to understand what is the best way to do this before we even got rolling forward. And I think that I would call it product development, product market fit, and research into the industry is how we've positioned ourselves to come out of the gates with some good momentum. And I think that's something that's also underutilized. A lot of people have an idea and they just start running. I spent a lot of months just working through what this could look like, how we would operate, and bringing the right team together so that it would be flawlessly executed.
Yeah, well, and that would be your strength. So, with your CLO background, that's kind of usually what you hire someone like that for, right?
Think through the plan, hold you accountable to the plan.
Yeah, and I could tell you from my perspective, I've always viewed you as like pretty good at that. I remember you and I were both part of a mastermind for years, and I remember many people in that mastermind looking up to you from like an operational excellence standpoint. You were always the guy who had like the new way to like track metrics, KPIs for your team and stuff like that, which is cool. I appreciate somebody with that skill set because it's not a common skill set, but I can tell you that it applies to marketing pretty dang well. So it's
and I almost took that for granted until I came into the real estate investing space. I spent over a decade in oil and gas, focused on oil refining and setting up programs and establishing KPIs and measurements and rolling out different programs to ensure the facility that I worked at was a world-class operation, very, very renowned globally as a top quality operator. And so I took a lot of the stuff that we did kind of for granted. It was the only place that I had kind of planted my roots career-wise. And I came out, I was like, oh, you don't build your own dashboards? You guys don't operate on a lot of SOPs? How do we do? Well, all right, I guess that's where we should start. Let's get going. And it was just something that was kind of second nature to me and a lot of the people that I was used to working with. But I realized it can add a lot of value in the investment community.
Sure. So tell me this. I mean, you recently decided to do something new and you settled on like this TV advertising company. It's the direction you want to go. You with your skills, there's a lot of different things you could have done, right? So why this specifically?
Yeah. Number one, I think the incremental deal is always exciting for the real estate investor, for anybody participating in it. Like there's just a itch that gets scratched getting one more deal or, getting one more across the finish line. And I wanted to be a part of that because there were a lot of other opportunities, in those groups. There was a lot of people. It's like, hey, I'll pay you $1 more than whatever you're getting down the road. It's like, I understand, but I think there's a bigger vision to be cast. And so for me, I wanted to be focused more on the top of the funnel type things, marketing, sales. And this is something that I think TV's honestly very often overlooked as a marketing channel for real estate investors or perceived as very expensive. So part of it is demystifying that, and also as a gap exists out there in real estate investors' minds, there's a lot of opportunity there to help them see the light and capture those opportunities. So it was the biggest way that I could help real estate investors get more out of their business, get more out of life, while still being a part of that community. I just see eye to eye with a lot of the service organizations, the real estate investors that roll in the masterminds and meetup groups. We just see life through a similar lens.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, let's talk about TV. I have heard the same thing from many people, like vendors in TV, basically saying like people think it's like expensive, it's overlooked as a channel. From my perspective, it feels like everybody's doing TV. I feel like I hear about it a lot, but maybe it's just the kind of investors you're aiming around. Is that the case basically, where it's like, I'd assume investors that are doing more deals are a little bit more open to it. They almost thrive on the reputation of it's expensive and stuff because it means it's more of a competitive advantage, right?
Yeah. There's a little bit of like brag factor that might come with it if people want to. I almost like to view it as like it's still a little bit of a hidden secret. Like a lot of people who are familiar with real estate investing and what I do or what I did still kind of scratch their heads. They're like, really, TV works? I was like, yeah. They're like, well, I've never seen your ads. It's like, well, you're probably not selling your house for cash. So I hope you didn't see my ads because that means we're spending inefficiently. So it's a little bit of like, You don't know it if you're not the target demographic. But the target demographic, I think, would speak loudly in that, oh yeah, I see people's TV ads.
Sure. And I can tell you consistently across all companies I know of that do TV advertising, like the lead quality seems to be the thing that people are most excited about. And it's one of the few channels that rivals PPC or potentially exceeds PPC or SEO in some cases of lead quality, which is just, it's just something special, right? So like high volume potential and really, really good lead quality and authority. So that people talk when you're running TV. Like there's few channels that build your brand that much.
Yes.
Because for every person that reaches out from your ads, you also reached a lot of those people. You compare that to like direct mail, right? Where it's going to cost you 45 cents to reach someone. I don't know what kind of CPMs you guys are paying. I bet you it's 10, 20 bucks. You could tell me better than I could tell you, but cheap in comparison.
Yes.
So like, I don't even know what $40 or 40 cents per card works out to in terms of CPM. It would be way, way high, right? So the number of people that like get that impression of your brand, even compared to the number that reach out, like you get the leads, then you also get that built-in awareness for next time. It's the same thing I love about like Facebook ads, for example.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, in most markets, you're talking single-digit dollar CPMs.
Yeah, that is really cheap.
For even better, for your target demographic.
Sure. Yeah. Because like,
so it's a CPM for wealthy people of the ages 35 to 45, like that's not very meaningful. It's also probably more expensive than targeting people who might be selling their house for cash. So it's just a different demographic. And so we do get that granular and that specific to make sure we're getting the best bang for your buck when we're placing those advertisements. You know, you brought up another interesting topic based on lead quality, and that is a lot of feedback that I hear from people. It's very high quality leads. People usually want to work with your business specifically when they come to you from a TV advertising spot. And there's a couple of things that I attribute that to. One, you're getting to the consumer before they have a need. So you're building that brand before somebody needs to sell their house, and then a house might fall into their lap, they inherit it, they start to fall behind on payments, and you're already front of mind, where nobody's searching sell my home for cash unless they already have like some inkling they're going to want to do that.
Totally.
So they want an estimate, they want a bid, but you know, maybe we're dripping an ad on them on TV for months before they actually have a need. And the other thing that plays into too is it converts people who may not otherwise wanted to sell their home for cash to a cash home seller. So there's people out there that didn't even know that it was an option, and you're starting to convert them from listings, from a different avenue of selling their house over to selling for cash because they see, wow, this is a really simple process. I didn't even know this existed. And you're pushing them into the funnel that way before they think that they even could do that. And that's some of the feedback I'm getting from clients too. It's not just kind of anecdotally put out there. It's real data points.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's one trend that we've been watching for years is that the number of people on Google searching for a way to sell a house compared to the number searching for a way to sell a house fast or as is a changing ratio. There's been a large increase of distressed house selling searches over time, or looking for cash offers and things like that. But when you see a trend like that, it makes you wonder, like, where does that come from? And one of the explanations that I think I might believe the most, I can't prove it, anything's right or wrong. These are all just hypotheses, but it would be all the TV advertising that started happening in the space in the past few years, both gets leads for the companies that are doing it, but it also raises awareness in general that that's even an option. Because a lot of people just don't know to like look for that option until they find out about it, right? So it's like the backs of those TV budgets that some companies have that actually could even lift the awareness of this kind of option in the market in general.
And I think local real estate investors that we're used to working with actually owe some credit to the big dogs like Zillow and Opendoor that they spent millions to convert people who wouldn't have sold their home for cash or sold to a business, they converted a ton of people into that pie.
Yeah, iBuyers, if you look at it from that lens, potentially help the industry in terms of they make it larger and then they themselves fail because they don't have good unit economics.
Yes,
And everybody
exactly.
gets to benefit.
Exactly. So to benefit the local real estate investors, yes, they paved a way and then stepped out of it for the most part.
Yeah, that's a fascinating way to think about it. So what do you think? I mean, we were just talking before this about this concept that I presented on today called first party marketing. We did a webinar with Stephanie Betters to the left main, group of people. I don't know what you call it, community, something like that. So I'm curious to hear like your take on that concept and how TV fits into the idea of owning your marketing, owning your brand, and building an asset that's worth something.
Yeah. So the first hurdle that I think people need to overcome, and I know a lot of our clients have already overcome that, but the first hurdle to overcome is direct to seller marketing. And I was at a conference recently and realized that not everybody even understands that that's an option. So
Yeah, it's wild to think because that's like our entire world, but
exactly. And you think, well, I call it the burden of knowledge, right? Once you know something, you think everybody else knows it too.
sure.
And so I got humbled a little bit in that not everybody understands that that's an option or why it would be a valuable option. So step one, direct to seller marketing. That is kind of the fundamentals of flipping and wholesaling. I know most of the listeners probably already understand that, but if not, do some homework in direct to seller marketing. The second part is you need to own your brand and identity and start to build authority in your marketplace. And in my opinion, obviously I'm biased, but TV is one of the fantastic ways to do that. You become a little bit of like just part of a process that's very transactional if you rely on other people for leads and opportunities. Paper lead providers, even agent referrals, you could argue, are very difficult to build a strong, sustainable business. I know a lot of people do it and it can be done, but there's something to say about having a quality brand, your own data, predictable lead engine. And in my opinion, TV adds a ton of value in that process for more reasons than just getting high quality leads.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Because I mean, the reality of the situation is like the better you can control, the better you can optimize, right? So if you're looking like, are you going to make more money wholesaling or holding a property today? The answer is going to be wholesaling, right? But long term, it's going to be holding.
Yep.
Where you can make more money, or even exits like a wholesale, where you are going to make a lot more money in a little bit more time, right? Those are always going to be better. I almost think of like any marketing options that don't like build your. If you think about it, this is going to sound maybe more organized than it is in my brain because I just came up with this about 2 seconds ago. But if you think about it, there's kind of 3 things that you get from a marketing channel or marketing dollars that you spend. The first one, a result. You're going to get the leads, the contracts, the deals that come in, right? The second one, the awareness that it generates and the way it builds your brand and kind of builds this asset that is your marketing. And the third one is the learnings, right? You just gathered data about how this thing works for you, which data you can use to optimize, to shift budget between channels, et cetera, so that you can get better and better at it over time, right? So every dollar you spend makes it so that that dollar you spend tomorrow might be just a little bit more effective because of that brand effect and because of that learning effect, right? And you think about it, the way, like when we're focusing on non-first party channels, we're basically over optimizing for that results component and we're ignoring the other 2 components that make a business really valuable over a long period of time. And without that, you're just like constantly on that hamster wheel, always like looking for that next thing and cutting this and starting that, versus building, like, for lack of a better word, like equity in your marketing.
Correct.
That's worth something.
Yeah. And equity beyond just like your brand positioning. I mean, it's true equity in your business. most professional real estate investors don't want to be doing every job in their business. Maybe some of them want to sell their business someday, and having something that has true equity and value can be traded. And it's really difficult to say that you have a lot of value or equity if you're kind of a middleman in that transaction process and you don't have ownership, control, opportunities to improve. I think that's what a lot of people value and look for if they're gonna buy a business.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I mean, I think someone explained it to me really well. We were talking about like different businesses and why they trade at different multiples and stuff. I mean, like people focus so much on like, are you categorized as this? Are you categorized as that? But really the reality is like those different categories have different multiples because of the characteristics that are usually true of that business, right? So I could have like I know someone who has a technology company, a software company. The software company is very successful from a revenue standpoint if we're just comparing to like companies in this industry, right? And so he's working with investment bankers, and he's like, well, where's my 10x multiple on revenue? They're like, no, it's not. You can't just be like a software company and that's why you're valuable. It's like software companies are valuable because of these things. And your company, despite being a software company, doesn't have those things. And also any other company that has those things would also be really valuable. Right.
Yes.
So it's not about like what kind of industry are you in? It's about those foundations of the business. And I can tell you like a business that owns their marketing way more valuable than one that doesn't, right? And that would be like having immature like marketing would be a big factor of why I think the average wholesale business isn't super successful. And you and I both know people who've exited wholesale businesses at decent or had opportunities to exit them at decent valuations. Like it's possible, it's a sellable business, but it just comes down, I think, to like how you run that business. And this would be one of those components, right? There's a lot of other components to it, but like it's just like it's crazy because the same things that make it valuable to whoever that buyer is, they're the same things that make it valuable to you.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Like, why does that buyer want those things? Well, because it gives them like safety, security, reliability of the business, and likelihood of future growth, like all those things. Like they're just buying projected future cash flows. And the fact that they see value in your business means that you should see very little value in it as well.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and to add on to that, it's not only just marketing, but do you use employees or do you subcontract everything out? What do you do in-house? Like, what are your true capabilities of your business? What makes it durable? Because, to your point, somebody's paying you for future cash flow. So what is the guarantee that future cash flow comes in the door? And you need to make sure that it's a strong argument that that's going to continue to happen. Because if it's not a strong argument, you're not going to get much money for your business, if at all.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, and I would argue TV is definitely one of the channels that builds brand the most. One thing people talk a lot about is how TV lifts other channels in your marketing, which I think is true to some extent. I also think it's like maybe a little overplayed in some circumstances because people don't understand exactly how it lifts those other channels. Like I can tell you that from the standpoint of PPC, people think like your whole PPC budget's magically going to work better because you're doing TV, and that's not exactly true. It might be true that your branded campaign has a ton of traction and it wouldn't otherwise. But really, that's just like your TV leads coming in through a different place, usually.
Correct.
But I can tell you, there's nothing that increases the number of people searching for your brand online like a TV campaign. Like for us, it's almost like if a client sends 100,000 mailers a month, that's the same. They'll get the same number of branded searches as if they're spending $3,000 on TV every month. It's insane, the brand effect. I made up those numbers. I don't know exactly what those numbers should be, but what I'm saying is like our clients that have like the most aggressive like mail and cold call campaigns and things like that have very minimal branded search volume unless they also have TV, and even moderate to small TV budgets have tons of branded search.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I think is still a light that people need to see in the flipping and wholesaling business. It is massively powerful, and it is a massive ocean of sellers and opportunities, especially like we talked about. You're converting people who wouldn't have sold for cash to people who are selling for cash. And if you're the one that changed their perspective, guess who they're going to work with? They're probably going to work with you. And where do you get the best deals? The people who only want to work with you. And so that's the power of it. But to your point, it doesn't work alone. You still need to have good sales process. You still need to handle the leads well. Like you talked about, you probably need a quality branded campaign. Your competitors are going to figure it out, and they're going to start to advertise on your keywords when there's search traffic on it. So you got to get your elbows out a little bit online and defend some of your territory.
Well, in this industry, so many people, their competitors don't even need to figure it out because they have like generic company names like Florida Home Buyer or something like that. And anybody who's just targeting home buyer keywords, they're naturally going to show up for you, whether they're out to get you or not.
Yes, exactly.
An advantage on TV if they have a unique name that doesn't mesh with the natural like keyword searches that exist in the industry.
I thought you put on a great masterclass in Steve Trang's podcast. You did like a 4-part mini series.
Oh, yeah.
That was a fantastic breakdown of just what you said there in understanding how people Google things, if it is an easy to defend territory under your brand name, or is it already getting a bunch of search traffic organically? I think a lot of people think, well, there's value if it's just going to happen organically, and you know better than anybody else if that's going to happen or not. I look at it as like, well, if somebody's Googling like Luke Winter's home buying business, there's not going to be a lot of organic search on that. So it's actually probably not a bad business name.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, although home buying business might catch you.
Yeah.
Because that Google might consider that close enough to like companies that buy houses or something like that. So it's oddly common in this industry how many company names are like generic enough that they could show up in a search. It used to be back in the day that by like naming my company Sell Your House Fast Orlando, I would like rank really easily organically for people searching for like Sell Your House Fast.
I'm curious how true is that today?
It's almost irrelevant today. It's gone. Like it's like one of the last things on the list. So but that used to be like, I've run into people, goodness, at that mastermind that we're both part of. I ran into someone who like showed me, he's like, look at all the domains I bought. And he bought like 1,000 domains that were like all the I'm like, I'm sorry, man, you're like 10 years late. If you'd done this like a decade ago, you'd be cruising, but it's not time.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. But once upon a time, it was like that for sure. And it's Google kind of caught on to that, right? Because it's not like Google's job is to find the most relevant and authoritative result for someone's search. And that doesn't necessarily mean the company that has the URL that most closely matches the search.
Correct.
Just one factor, right?
Yeah. They've wisened up a little bit.
Totally. Yeah. Although there is some suspicion that like branded search could make a difference. Like if you have more branded search for your campaign, and like TV could positively affect SEO in that way. I have to check with my SEO director on it, but I'm pretty sure that's what I saw, because like Google had an algorithm leak. I can't remember exactly how it happened, but yeah, they had part of their algorithm and like the documents leak, and so everybody was just fighting through there, figuring out what it is, and I think that was one of those things in there, which is a little bit crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, and if that's the direction that the algorithm is working, I think TV is a great move, because it drives those branded searches, which then helps your SEO ranks, which helps you get more organic leads, free leads.
From Google's perspective, like there's these 1,000 websites that could show up this keyword search, but this one website has a lot of people searching for it all the time, and they find it and they click to it and they don't click back right away. Like, what does that tell us? It tells us that company probably has more traction. They're probably more authoritative in the space, right? So I think definitely one of those things where like regardless of if it's proven or not, it's like decent likelihood that it at least correlates with the things that get you SEO success. So do you guys just do TV? Is that your focus? You always want it to be that way?
I want it to be that way to start. It's the way that we can add the most value for most real estate investors. We can also do billboard and radio. Those are even bigger branding plays. And I think most real estate investors, they might never get to a point where they need those marketing channels. But if you're continuing to grow and you need diversity in marketing, then those are other good avenues to go down as well. But there's a lot of room to go before you hit a ceiling in TV advertising, budget-wise, I should say. And so there's not a lot of businesses that are going to tap on that ceiling and need to break into another channel. I'm not saying put all your eggs into the TV basket. That's not smart. Like you gotta have diversity, but the ceiling is typically much higher than people think.
Yeah, but I mean, I totally understand what you're saying. One of the most common things that people ask us at the beginning, it's very common someone has the mindset like, I'll just spend your budget that you have is infinity dollars, so long as it's working. And then like they start at 10 grand a month. And then by the time we get to 15, they're like, okay, hold on, I got to figure out some other stuff. And you start to realize like, it's actually like when marketing's your only constraint, it feels like if you could fix that, the sky's the limit. And then once you fix that and you realize there's always another constraint.
Yeah. Oh, I need more money. I need more people. I need this. I need that. Like my software broke. My bank.
It's the joy of
ties
business.
with me. Yeah. Yeah.
The joy of business is always something else. You're right. And so to build an operation that outscales like a few like core marketing channels is big. Although it depends on the market, I'd assume. Like I bet you have some tiny markets with TV where you can't really spend as much.
Yeah. Yeah. You might tap out pretty quick in a really small market. But you might also be the only guy doing it in that tiny little market, and you're going to have very quick brand authority.
Sure. Yeah. It takes just a little bit to be the big guy versus some of these other markets. I mean, I know people spending upwards of $500,000 a month on TV in a single market. It's wild how insane they can get. Obviously, they're doing it for a reason. Yeah. Nobody's out there just buying brand awareness with $500,000 a month in this industry. Like they're getting leads, they're getting deals. So
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm curious to pick your brain on? Marketing return on investment. In your opinion, how should it be calculated? What is good? What is bad? What is normal? What is exceptional? Like, there's a lot, like this is the metric. Obviously, we all care about this metric, perhaps more than most other metrics, right? Because it's an efficiency metric that shows us like the unit economics of the business and is it stable, right?
Yes.
But there's a lot of different opinions.
There's a lot of different opinions. And I think, my background is engineering. I spent a lot of time in pretty advanced math classes, and I can hold my own in a lot of those types of conversations. So I'll give you a little bit of a nerdy take on it.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah. Okay. So here, and I like that you asked the question because it's also probably question number 1, 2, or 3 that prospective clients ask me. And I'm sure they ask you the same thing.
What's the cost per lead and what's the ROI?
Yeah, exactly. How much money is it going to cost me? And how much am I going to make with you guys? That's all, right? And it's like super rudimentary.
As if whatever you answer to that question should affect the likelihood of them hiring you.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I say 5, are you going to be happy? Because you could get 5 or 5 times R. Sure. What about 7? Like we could come up with a way where you get 7. It might take you 10 years, but you're going to get a 7x ROI on it. Sure. Are you happy with that? And they go, oh no, I'm not happy. Like, okay, well then let's talk about what you are happy with. Okay, so we'll go back. There's a few factors that I think are important when you talk about ROI. The first one that is almost always overlooked is cash conversion cycle. And I mean true cash conversion cycle. Not when you start getting a lead, not when you close on the deal. Like when did you spend $1 on that marketing channel? And when do you get that $1 and hopefully some more friends of that $1 back in your bank account? Like to the day.
So yeah, even taking into account like terms for payment, those marketing dollars and things like that.
100%.
Yeah, like if you have to prepay, like when you spend the $1, when do you get it back?
100%. Yes, you need to understand that because that goes into return on investment. Your return on investment is often looked at in a vacuum without a measure of time on it. And I think that is skewing a lot of people's perspective on performance of their business and performance of their marketing, to be honest. So look at, when did the dollar leave your bank account and when did you get that back? Wholesalers are going to have a short cash conversion cycle. Wholesalers who use techniques that in their marketing that can turn dollars into leads quickly, for example, maybe that's pay per lead. TV is pretty good. Google pay per click is also pretty good. Say that again?
Yeah, I'd say Google pay per click for a lot of our clients is like their fastest. Just because, the people are like ready.
Yeah, and you probably put it on a credit card. So did you actually pay for it that day, or did you pay for it 20 days later when that statement comes due?
You would actually get billed for it. It's like the impression would happen today. You'd get billed for it in maybe, depending on what you're spending, 5 days or 10 days. And then you wouldn't have to pay the credit card for however long that is.
And that matters. And that's what I mean.
By the time you pay your credit card bill.
Exactly. But that's the moment that you need to start counting the clock for that marketing channel. When does the dollar leave your bank account? And there's a lot of advantages to getting the phone to ring without dollars leaving your bank account, or compressing that time so you're not paying for marketing and waiting for the phone to ring, right? Things like direct mail have a long cash conversion cycle. You're probably paying for lists. You're probably sending mail. It's literally snail mail, right? You're waiting days or weeks for it to hit people's, to be printed, to hit people's inbox, their mailboxes, and then you're waiting for the response.
Call you six weeks later.
6 weeks, 6 months. Like that could be a long time. Yeah. I mean, people who are doing direct mail, they know, like people who track it tight, like it can be a long time. They almost laugh about it. Like, I got to call 18 months down the road.
Yeah. It's always a bonus.
It's a bonus and it goes into it, but the cash conversion cycle measures, are off the charts when you start to factor stuff like that in. So that's a huge component of it. And then you need to understand what the revenue is per deal, per marketing channel, and you're hopefully attributing leads to the right marketing channel for your ad spend in that window of time. And so let me get more specific. So if you spend dollars today on TV and it generates leads today, then you should attribute that lead to that dollar spent. And we'll just put a bracket on it in that month. Things like direct mail, you might have to bucket it in a little bit different window. Maybe it's 3 months or 6 months or for that overall campaign if you're good at tracking it. But you need to attribute it very specifically to that event. And so then you can start to understand what is the ROI on a unit of time basis for each channel. And so anyway, I know I'm getting into the weeds here on measuring it, but it's oversimplified. And I think a lot of people skip those steps of understanding, well, what are you actually measuring and why is it important? So that's kind of the foundation of it, right? Understand your cash conversion cycle, ROI, marketing dollars per month, per channel, and as granular as you can get it. Mm-hmm. And then you can start to understand what's your business strategy so that you can maximize your revenue. So if you're churning in 90 days, like a wholesaler might, cash conversion cycle is 90 days. Your marketing dollar that's giving you a return of 3x, that's probably pretty good because you can start that cycle over again in 90 days. So when you look at it on a 12-month calendar basis, what is your return? If you put 10 grand into the machine and it brings $20,000 in friends back every 90 days, you're technically not spending $40,000 in a 12-month period. It's the same 10 grand going in the machine and out, in the machine and out. And every time that it goes into the machine and comes back out, it puts 20 grand in your pocket. So don't think about it as you need 40 grand of cash. Think about it as you need 10 grand of cash and you're playing that game multiple times. And the time that it takes to play that game is your cash conversion cycle. And you can control that.
That's an interesting way of explaining it. I never thought about that. Like your total budget required for the channel is lower if your cash conversion cycle is faster. which makes sense because it's the same money going back and forth. It's a fascinating way to think about it. I think it's one of the most difficult things about the question, like what is the return on investment of something, is it totally depends. Like you take a business that flips, you take a business that wholesales, and they're going to have all other things equal, which we both know they rarely are. Oftentimes companies that flip actually aren't as good at real estate acquisitions as companies that wholesale, because for companies that wholesale, it's the whole deal, right? But in assuming all other things equal, the company that flips might have a 2 or maybe even 3 times higher return on investment. But does that mean it's a healthier business? Not necessarily, because it also hurts from a cash conversion cycle standpoint. It also takes on significantly more risk. There's more
Correct.
moving around. So that's, I think, I like what you're saying about taking into account cash conversion cycle by channel as well, because it's a big factor of comparing channels. Like you said, the channels really is significantly less expensive if you have a lower cash conversion cycle.
Correct. And cash conversion cycle takes into account your dispo strategy, but also I think, and that's where I think a lot of the industry focuses on. Cash conversion cycle, usually people start the clock when they get a lead. They go, how long did it take me to flip the house? It's an important metric, but it doesn't help you analyze your marketing and your dispo strategy and your pull business. The other thing that's important to distinguish
those things.
What's that?
I was saying it will vary by like marketing channel and
Yes.
right. So I think that's where like a lot of people they get so caught up on just return on investment they miss that like there's some companies that are running at a lower return on investment than you might be willing to accept, but they're using channels that are really friendly in all these other ways, and because of that they're killing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, it's like the one metric doesn't describe the situation fully accurately.
Correct. Yeah. Would you be happy with a business that had a cash conversion cycle of 30 days and gave you a 2x ROI? If you run a lean business, like that could be pretty good. 3, you go, dude, that's crushing it. If I can get a 3x and churn my money every 30 days, I would do that over and over and over again. That's not quite the metrics that most wholesalers or flippers operate on. It takes a little bit longer time to put deals together, to find buyers, to get them closed, to get cash back. But it's an important metric that people need to think about. The other distinguishing piece too that I think people get hung up on is understanding cash requirements versus your budget. So that 90-day cycle that we were talking about of your 10 grand coming in and your 20 grand coming back out, your budget should be 40 grand in that annual cycle. And you need to forecast that out for annual planning. But if you're also keeping a track of your cash conversion cycle and you're hitting those 90-day metrics, you only need 10 grand cash. So don't think about it as you need 40 grand to execute this big vision strategy in your business. Understand your cash requirements too. And it's just kind of a fundamental of business operations is your cash position, your cash forecasting, that also I think a lot of real estate investors overlook, that honestly big companies, they've got a really strong grasp on that.
Yeah, it's a super interesting way to think about it. Just as you're speaking, I'm almost like thinking in my head, like, is there some metric that like encapsulates this well? Like what happens if you like divide your ROI by the number of days it takes to get that, and you compare marketing channels on that level? It's like, that might even be a stupid idea, but it's interesting to think about those things. I wonder if it gets you more apples to apples. So like a company that flips can like more apples to apples compare their numbers to one that wholesales by those different factors. Although the one thing is flipping, you're never going to be able to appropriately understand the risk that you're taking. That's the thing, is risk never shows up on the P&L until it's a problem.
Yes, exactly.
And then it could wipe out all the good things your P&L ever had to say, depending on how bad it is.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you need to be careful. There's risk there. The biggest risk for most wholesalers is your time investment, your capital and marketing, payroll expenses, any overhead, that type of stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's been plenty of flippers in the last few years that had to write 7-figure checks back into their businesses.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, and who's to say what that looks like over time? You know, the market can get crazy. And I'm not saying I wouldn't flip or that I don't believe in that strategy. I do. I'm just saying the risk that you take on doesn't make its way into your P&L.
Correct.
And if it did, those businesses would look a little bit different. Not bad, maybe. Maybe they'd still look great, but
it's very hard to it's very hard to mitigate those risks. It's hard to hedge that bet.
totally. All right, I have one last out there question for you, Luke, before I let you go here. Operations, I feel, is your thing. It's what I respect you for the most. It seems to be where you've had the vast majority of your career, right? And you're deeply experienced with the real estate investing type business. And you know a lot of other people operating these kinds of businesses and things like that. In your opinion, if there was one thing that the average investor would be best served by fixing this one mistake that they're making in a real estate investing business, what would that one thing be?
That's an interesting question and very broad. But I think that most people start into the business to run it as a business and get stuck operating some component of it. And that's okay. You need to understand what you're good at and then get out of the way for everything else. And I think a lot of people get started and they get caught up in the activity of it all. Deal junkies, they like the rehabs, they like talking to sellers, they like bragging about how much, they negotiated down on a deal or whatever it might be, what margin they got on a deal. But most of them, that's not their why or why they got into it. And I think people need to at least be aware of like what makes them happy, what makes them fulfilled, and run it like a business. And there's some elements, like we barely scratched the surface of talking about cash management, cash forecasting, but there's some elements that I think people are overlooking, thinking they have it. They've got the ball financially, financial controls, whatever it might be, acquisitions, dispo, but you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes it's good to take a step back and say, would I hire me for this spot? And so just understanding like, what are you good at? What is the business about? Because there's people that can operate different components of the business, whether it's marketing, like you and I can help people with, whether it's different roles, accounting metrics. There's a lot of great resources out there, but understand it's a business that has its own needs to be fulfilled. So from a broad brush stroke, that would probably be most applicable to most people.
Let me try to summarize what you said, and you tell me if I got it right.
Sure.
Which, as I understand it, is basically like in this industry, there's a lot of owner operators. It's probably true for any industry where the average revenue is similar to in this industry, right? Like that's probably not true in industries where like the companies on average are massive, right? But just like we're talking about like growing entrepreneurs with businesses like doing up to 5 million in revenue a year is like the majority of this industry, right? So it sounds like your belief is a lot of those people end up working a specific function in the business. And sometimes that's not what they're actually best at, and they might be holding their business back because of that.
That is a very good summary. Thank you for putting it so eloquently.
Well, I also took forever to say what I was saying. But
yeah, and I
resonates. I've been that guy.
Yeah,
I've been there.
Same. And it's a necessary part of scaling your business. And that's okay. It's okay to be in that season, but it's not okay to be in that season forever. And most flipping and wholesaling businesses, like they have good enough margins where you should be investing back into your business and into your people. Like there's not a lot of businesses that survive on a handful of contracts every month and can float multiple employees. And there are a lot of people out there in social media land driving pretty fancy cars and pretty big mansions bragging about their business. And that it's a luxury of the industry that is an advantage, but you also need to look at it like a business too, in that it's good. Keep operating it with good principles, good morals and values, and it'll keep delivering back to you for a long time.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. One of my favorite quotes is from Henry Ford. He says, "Many a man who is supposed to have 10 years experience really has 1 year experience repeated 10 times."
Exactly.
I think it's so easy to end up there, like if you're not careful. As a
Yes.
business owner. What you're basically explaining is like, it's okay. Like your seat that you're sitting in as a business owner right now is marketing. Like that's fine. If that's still true in several years, you've probably got a problem, right? Because there's like the normal like period of growing through something like that, but it shouldn't be like where you land.
Correct. Or make it deliberate because you are the best in that spot. So
Sure.
set up everything else to be staffed, managed, outsourced with the best person possible for your business, and then pick the seat that you're happiest in, that you're best at, and your business will flourish.
Yeah, I know a guy, wildly successful real estate investor. His company does, if I had to guess, 400, 500 deals a year, and he still runs appointments.
Yeah. Maybe he's really good at it.
Apparently, he's incredible, closes at a astronomically high rate, and he still has other salespeople run some of those appointments, but he personally gets a lot of those deals.
Yeah.
And he's just found ways for everybody else to manage everything else, and that's what he likes to do. Like his ideal day, I'm going to go on 2 appointments, and I'm going to go get a drink tonight. Like that's like his like ideal lifestyle.
Yeah. And that's fine. And that's why a lot of people get into business too, is to do whatever you want, whenever you want.
Sure.
But I think you also,
appointments, so be it. I think for lots of us, that's the dream. But for some of us, like that's cool. But the key is he like figured out what he's really good at and what he wants to do, and then the rest of it is delegated to people who are better at it than he is.
correct. The thing that people also can never give up if they're a true owner of the business is there's responsibilities that the owner needs to do at all times. And it might be 0 today. It might take up 100% of your day tomorrow, but it's almost impossible to delegate those duties.
What are things that fall on that list, in your opinion?
I think there's things that are critical decisions to make based on risk that the business owner can't delegate. So we'll just say things that could jeopardize the whole business, could jeopardize somebody's safety, that could jeopardize all working capital. Those are things that if you look at it in the rearview mirror, in the 1% chance that something goes wrong, you go, the owner was sleeping at the wheel. And you can't, it's just really difficult to delegate those things. And you have to be eyes wide open to that and responsible for it to see the long-term success, right? This is all played out over years and decades. I'm not saying you have to do it all day, every day, or can you get away with it for a year or two? Sure. We all know people that can kick back for a year or two, but over the long term, to be thriving for decades, you have to fulfill those roles. You have to look at the legal matters. You have to look at the capital requirements of the business. You have to look at the personal risk that you're taking on. Are you putting your employees in unsafe situations? Those are things that are only pointed at the owner.
Yeah, the way I would describe the things that, like, it feels like most of the things that you just described kind of fall under this category of it's not going to show up in next month's P&L, but it matters a ton over time. Like one of those could be like, let's just say you had a business operator who say like, hey, your job is to make sure we profit $100,000 every month. Business operators, okay, that's my job. I do that. And then you find out like the way we're doing that is we're taking massive risk in a lot of these real estate projects, and we'll probably hit those things. But if it goes south, we'll lose everything we've ever made and way more.
Yeah. Or they're stealing deeds. They go, whoa. That's not the business that we're operating. Like
Sure.
you just told me to make $100,000 a month.
Sure.
I've heard about people in Florida, dozens of deeds stolen out from under their feet. They own the property and it just evaporates. Their ownership is gone.
Wild. Yeah, I haven't heard about that. But yeah, so it'd be things that like that basically can't show up in someone's KPIs. Like the integrity of the company is not in any particular person's KPIs. And like the amount of risk that we take in getting to the results that we get to is not necessarily easy to put on anybody's KPIs, right? So somebody who has like the like longest term view needs to be involved in those things. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, and the best way to put it into a bucket is a board of directors or chairman of the board, right? They're still involved in some of the decision making. You could hire a CEO, you can hire a COO, you can hire a whole C-suite of people. The board is very hard to delegate. You might want to bring in diverse opinions, but if you were the owner of that company, at least for me, I would want a board seat. I wouldn't delegate my company's board seat to somebody else. I would always want to be involved in those conversations. So what are those board critical conversations? Like you can't put 100% away on somebody else's plate.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, thank you for your time today, Luke. This was awesome. Sorry I took so much of it. For anybody who's listening to this and they want to get to know you better or reach out to your company, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so they can visit my website, which is thehellopro.com, or you can find me on social media. Instagram is hellopro.tv, or feel free to reach out to me directly. Shoot me an email, luke@thehellopro.com.
Right on. Thank you, Luke. Appreciate it. And for everybody else listening, I will see you next week.
Thanks, Brandon.